Welcome, and thank you for joining the Energy Storage and Distributed Energy Resources Phase 3 Market Simulation Readiness Call. Before we begin, please ensure you have opened the WebEx participant and chat panels by using the associated icons located at the bottom of your screen. Note that all audio connections are muted at this time. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Radha Madrigal from Customer Readiness.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for joining us today. We're here to talk about the changes being implemented for Phase 3 of the Energy Storage and Distributed Energy Resources Initiative. My name is Radha Madrigal, and I am a lead client trainer in the Customer Readiness Department. And we're going to go ahead and go around the room and introduce the others that we have here with us.
Eureka Collado, IT. PS Self Market Services.
Joe Powers, Policy. And Greg Ford with IT Department.
Thank you. In an effort to increase transparency and provide greater service to our stakeholders, we are recording this webinar. It will be posted on our website so that you can review it in the future and for those who are not able to join today's call. For those of you who are following along on the call, these slides are posted on kaisa.com and can be found on the release planning page under the Fall 2019 releases. And our AT&T operator, Will also send you a link in the chat. Today we'll be discussing the purpose of the SIBR initiative. We'll also review the changes being implemented with Phase 3A. We'll review the changes to ISO software applications, and we'll go over the activities that will occur during market simulation. For those of you who may be new to this topic, I have included a reference section at the end of the presentation with links to various project documents as well as a glossary of terms and acronyms that I'll be using in the presentation. The central focus of the Energy Storage and Distributed Energy Resources, or SIBR initiative, is to lower barriers and enhance the ability of transmission grid-connected energy storage and distribution-connected resources to participate in the market. The number and diversity of these resources is growing and represents an increasingly important part of the resource mix. Integrating these resources will help lower carbon emissions and add operational flexibility. As part of this implementation, we are also including a change in order to comply with the SIBR 2 tariff data submittal requirement. Customer load baselines are required to be calculated in conjunction with the various performance evaluation methodologies for PDRs and RDRRs. Per the tariff requirements, the calculated customer load baselines are required to be submitted to the ISO along with the underlying load and consumption data associated with the customer load baseline. This project provides the requirements and capabilities to submit customer load baseline data in MRI-S. This project introduces new demand response dispatchable bidding options. Currently, demand response resources are limited to a 5-minute bid option. This product will introduce new dispatchable bid options of 60 minutes and 15 minutes. We're also removing the single LSE requirement for DR registrations and default load adjustment. Currently, a DR registration requires that all service accounts or locations will be within the same LSE. This project removes the requirement for a single LSE, and removing that single LSE requirement combined with these new bidding criteria will eliminate the need for the DLA, or the default load adjustment. We'll also add a new field to master file to identify PDR and RDRR resources, and we'll talk more about that field when we go over the changes to the master file application in a few minutes. In future phases of SIBR, there are proposed changes to implement a new load shift product for behind-the-meter storage and provisions for the measurement of load curtailment by behind-the-meter electric vehicle supply equipment. Details on these proposed changes can be found in the DRRS document, and I've included a link to this document in the reference section of the presentation. Now we'll take a look at the changes being implemented to various ISO applications. We have added 2 new fields to the master file. DR type is a new field that will identify the type of resource. Today's current mechanism to identify resource type needs to be updated, and we will be populating this field for all existing resources as part of production activation. This field will update automatically based on the registration in DRRS. Also, as a side note, this new identifier is anticipated to be leveraged in the ESDR 3B implementation of the PDR load shift product. The second field added to the master file is the bid dispatchable option for DR. This allows PDR resources to select new dispatchable bid options of 60 minutes and 15 minutes. This field will default to the 5-minute option if no action is taken. The bidding options enable a PDR resource to be dispatched for time periods that are supported by its individual operating characteristics. The options are 5, 15, or 60 minutes. Note that RDRR resources are considered 5-minute and are not eligible to change this option. And for dynamic and ASVR import resources, this field is set consistent with the hourly pre-dispatch flag. All other resources are 5-minute. With DRRS, we're changing some functionality. The ISO currently requires that DR resource aggregations consist of locations that are represented by 1 demand response provider within a single sublap under a single LSE. This requirement is changing to allow registrations to include locations or service accounts from multiple LSEs. The other requirements will remain the same. This is a change to the UI and API, and we'll show you screenshots of the UI changes on the coming slides. The API changes are accessible on the ISO developer site. Note that the DRRS user guide has been updated with these changes, and I have a link both to the developer site and the DRRS user guide in the reference section. In DRRS, the Create Registration screen has been updated. We have removed the LSE and DLAP fields. Demand response providers can create registrations from locations or service accounts from multiple LSEs. The list of available locations to add to a registration is based on the DRP, UDC, sublap, and the effective dates selected. It no longer filters by the LSE. Because we have removed the LSE and DLAP fields from the registration page, if you edit a pre-existing registration, you'll see that those records contain data from before. However, these fields will be blank for all registrations created on or after the activation of ESDR 3A. From the LSE's perspective in DRRS, an LSE can only view locations in a registration that have been mapped or identified as belonging to them. Like the other screens, the LSE and DLAP fields will contain data for pre-existing records, but will be blank for all new registrations. You'll see this pattern on other screens as well, such as the Terminate Registration screen or when you export registrations. The data has not been deleted from the system, so when it is available for pre-existing registrations, you'll see it listed in those fields. So we've talked about changes to 2 applications. Let's take a question break here. Before we move on, Will, do we have any questions about the changes to master file or DRRS?
We currently do not have any questions in the queue, but just to remind everyone, to ask a question, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad. You'll hear a notification when your line has been unmuted. At that time, please then state your question. And we still have no questions in the queue.
Okay, let's move on. With regard to SIBR, we will be implementing new business rules that validate bids from PDR and RDRR resources to ensure that they meet or exceed the net benefits test price threshold. This applies to energy bids in the day-ahead and the real-time markets. For example, if the net benefits test price threshold is $30 for a given month, The bid price must be greater than or equal to $30 to be accepted by SIBR. If the bid price is less than $30, it will not be accepted. I have a list of the error messages you'll see on the next slide, and after that I'll show you where to find the net benefit test results. This is also a good place to note that the net benefit test pivots on the locational marginal price, meaning the NBT is the marginal value of the resource. The NBT, as ordered by FERC, was set up to assess the marginal cost based on LMPs. It does not include fixed costs, such as commitment costs, into the NBT test. It's strictly based on LMPs. I have a link to the relevant FERC order in the reference section at the end if you'd like more details on the topic. This is the list of error messages, so bids from PDR and RDRR resources that do not meet or exceed the NBT price threshold will receive error messages as shown on the slide as applicable to your specific bid situation. With regard to the net benefits test results, these reports are published on the 15th of every month for the following trade month. They provide on-peak and off-peak monthly threshold market clearing prices applicable to demand response resources. These reports are posted to the Reports and Bulletins page, which is accessible from the Market and Operations tab on CAISO.com. You'll see the heading for Demand Response Net Benefit Test Results toward the top of the list here. We'll take a moment here to discuss how the real-time market processes the PDR hourly and 15-minute bid options. These new bidding options provide longer notification times and extended real-time dispatch intervals for PDRs. With regard to hourly bids, energy is dispatched for the full hour in the hour-ahead scheduling process, or HASC, but will be settled at 15-minute market prices over the operating hour. These instructions are communicated approximately 52.5 minutes before the flow of energy. The resource is considered to be a price taker for the full hour, and the hourly block bid option is not eligible for bid cost recovery. With regard to the 15-minute bid option, energy is dispatched in 15-minute blocks and settled at the FMM price. These instructions are communicated approximately 22.5 minutes before the flow of energy, and the 15-minute dispatchable option is eligible for bid cost recovery. With regard to startup time, the PDR bids startup time, which is registered in the master file, will be recognized in the day-ahead market. However, in real time, the master file startup time will be ignored so that HASC and FMM can dispatch according to the market notification timelines that we outlined for each bidding option on the previous slide. With regard to CMRI, we are not adding any new functionality to the application. However, for the hourly and the 15-minute bidding options, the CMRI reports will serve as your dispatch instructions. You will not be getting these dispatches in ADS. You'll view your energy schedules and awards in CMRI. These reports are located on the Real-Time tab, and we've highlighted two of them here. For the real-time unit commitment schedules, these are published as an advisory, but they are operationally binding for PDRs that select the hourly bid option. Real-time unit commitment runs and the report is published in CMRI 52.5 minutes before the hour. Some notes on reading this report: to find the right set of records, you would pick the interval time equal to the start of the hour and the market time 45 minutes prior to the start of the hour. For example, schedules for hour ending 21 come out by 19:07 and half a second, and half a minute. So you would look for the record with the interval start date time of 2000, which is the start of hour ending 21, and the market start date time of 1915, which is 45 minutes prior to 2000. The 15-minute market schedules are published as binding for PDRs selecting the 15-minute bid option. The hourly bid option will also see FMM awards consistent with their hourly schedule. FMM runs 37.5 minutes before the start of the binding interval, and the report is published 22.5 minutes before the start of the binding interval. Before we move on, are there any questions about SIBR or CMRI?
There are currently no questions in the queue.
Okay. With regard to MRI-S, the new data submittal requirements require an additional base measurement type submitted in MRI-S. There are also additional data requirements for baseline methods and measurement type mapping. There are changes to the API for MRI-S. I have a link to the developer site where they reside in the reference section. Here we have the mapping of the different baseline methods and measurement types that are shown on this slide. We have highlighted the changes in blue. At the beginning of the list here, there are no changes to the load, the gen, or the MB/MA measurement types. You'll see the changes with this implementation shown in blue. Here you'll see that there are changes to the data provided for the MGO or meter generation output options, as well as the base measurement type provided for monitoring. We have an example here for you to show you that DRPs will submit a base measurement for each hour that a DR resource is bid into the day-ahead or the real-time market. This data is provided in hourly granularity, and it applies to all baseline methodology types. Because this is an important citation, I'll mention the tariff section, which is 11.6.1, which states, for monitoring, compliance, and audit purposes, scheduling coordinators must submit in the settlement quality meter data system the customer load baseline as applicable and the actual underlying consumption or energy during all hourly intervals for the calendar days for which the meter data was collected to develop the customer load baseline pursuant to section 4.13.4. Only demand response energy measurements will be considered settlement quality meter data. So we have an example here of trade date April 30th, and you can see all 24 hours of that trade date are shown on the chart. The resource was awarded for hour ending 18 and hour ending 19, which you can see in red, and the 2 hours have a total expected energy that is greater than 0. Base submission is required for all of the hours that the resource was bid in. So with regard to adjusting the baseline data, you would only adjust for hour ending 18 and 19, and you'd have unadjusted data for all other hours. Those are indicated on the last row with the letter U for unadjusted and the letter A for adjusted. Your baseline data will be submitted in MRI-S from the batch status screen, which is divided into 2 sections. The left side shows the list of files that have been uploaded, and the right side provides additional information on files that contain errors and warnings. You would click on a batch from the list on the left to see the errors or warnings for that batch. The batch ID area will be blank for files that have been successfully uploaded. Note that although MRI-S is used to collect baseline data that baseline data is not considered meter data, which means that it cannot be displayed or retrieved from the meter data tab. I mentioned that on this section because this is the only place you'll see a reference to the base measurement type. If your batch triggers an error, you'll see the base measurement type on this screen like I've shown in the example. So you know that it's receiving that type of data, but you'll not be able to pull base data from the meter data screen. We've reached the end of the section related to changes to the ISO applications. Let's take a break here to see if anyone has any questions about MRI-S or any of the other applications that we've already discussed.
All right. We currently have one question in the queue.
Hi. I have a clarification question going back to the notification times. You said that if there's a commitment, so that in real time, the startup times won't be considered. That's conditional upon already receiving a commitment in day ahead, right? So if you don't receive a commitment in day ahead, either through an award or through RUC, then won't the startup time still be processed in as far as real-time market is concerned?
Yeah, hi, this is Greg. If you don't get a commitment a day ahead and you choose, and at that point you do not put a bid in real time, assuming you don't have some kind of a must-offer requirement, then you wouldn't get committed in real time. But yes, if you put a bid in real time, then your startup time is overridden with these notification times, assuming you've selected the hourly or the 15-minute option for PDRs.
So even
does that help?
Even if you have like a 2-hour startup time, that would be overridden by this notification.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, that does help. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, there are currently no other questions in the queue, but just as a reminder, you can place yourself into the queue by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. Oh, and I actually do see that one has just come in now.
Hi, this is Chenny Lo from PG&E. In terms of the error message handling, if a SC submit a list of the base data for a list of resource, so how is your error handling process work? Do you look through the whole file and identify the errors the file contains, or you only look at the first record? If the first record has some error, then you reject the submission.
Which application? This is for the...
Are you talking about MRI-S or are you talking about...
MRI-S.
I'm not sure that we have someone in the room who knows the answer to that question, so let me write that down and we'll take a note to follow up on that.
Thank you.
All right, there are no other questions in the queue.
All right, now we'll review the activities for market simulation. Here's a screenshot of the market participant portal in the Market Sim. I've put a box around all of the applications that are related to this implementation, though they are not all included in the structured scenarios. Here is the implementation timeline. Note that these dates may change. Please tune in to the RUG and the Market Sim calls to receive any updates to the dates that we've got listed here. The applications will be available in Market Sim beginning September 3rd for connectivity testing to ensure that you're able to access the system. We have structured scenarios during Market Sim that will begin on September 16th. There will be a specific date or set of dates set aside to go through the ESDR 3A structured scenarios. Tune in to the Market Sim conference calls to get more information about those specific dates. There's a few things that I want to point out with regard to go live. Master file will be updated on November 4th in preparation for the 11/13 trade date. And note that the last day to submit any changes to the master file UI or API is going to be November 8th before the master file freeze. Another thing I wanted to point out, if you download your master file data on November 6th, for the trade date of November 13th, you will see the new DR type flag set. And November 13th is the first trade date, which means that if you're submitting day-ahead bids, those need to be submitted prior to the market close, which is 10 a.m. on November 12th. Please also note the dates in purple for DRRS. November 5th is the end date for registrations with LSC and DLAP requirement, the old way. November 6th is going to be our production deployment date, and there will be no activity in DRRS on that day. And then November 7th is the start date for registrations that follow the new format and do not require a single LSC and or the DLAP requirement. The purpose of market simulation is to provide customers with the ability to preview and test the new functionality before it is implemented in the production environment. During Market Sim, the ISO will simulate the dispatch of resources using the new bidding options. You'll submit data and be able to validate the measurement types for these baselines on your settlement statement. For this Market Sim, there is an additional step that's required to participate in the structured scenarios. Market participants will need to register their request with the ISO to participate in the simulation via the marketsim@kaiso.com mailbox. You'll need to identify which resources you would like to set up as 60-minute dispatchable PDR and 15-minute dispatchable PDR. We'll allow one of each PDR resource type for these scenarios. You can either fill out the new RDT on the release planning page and email that to the Market Sim mailbox, or you can just give us the resource ID for one of your existing resources and let us know which PDR option you want it to have, and we'll set that up for you. Please complete this step by August 30th, which is this Friday. With regard to Market Sim, I've provided a link in the reference section to the structured scenarios, which go into each of the scenarios in detail. There are 3 scenarios in total. These scenarios list what the ISO will do and what the ISO market participants will do, along with the expected outcome. Please review these scenarios before Market Sim to become familiar with what will occur. In order to participate in Market Sim, you must be provisioned for access to the map stage environment. And I would also recommend that you attend the market simulation calls to stay informed on the timing of activities for this and other fall 2019 release initiatives. We have that kickoff call Thursday, August 29th at 2 p.m. We've reached the end of our slide set. Will, let's take our final question break here and ask the audience, what questions do you have?
All right, I'm not seeing any questions in the queue at this time.
Okay. We've reached the end of our presentation. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, these slides are posted on kaiso.com and can be found on the release planning page under the fall 2019 releases. These slides will also be added to the Learning Center, and the recording of this webinar will be posted there by the end of the week. While reviewing the posted slides, you'll see that there is a reference section at the end that provides links to helpful documentation, such as the DRRS user guide, the structured scenarios for market simulation, as well as additional project-related documentation. Thank you for your participation in today's call. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using AT&T Event Conferencing Enhanced.